Hello everyone, I'm Langwen Huang. I'm a PhD student from ETH. So today I would like to present my paper about compressing multidimensional weather and climate data into neural networks. So before we start, we all know the climate change is a great challenge for all of us. Because of climate change, we are facing much more severe weathers like drought, floods, and hurricanes and typhoons. And also because of climate change, lots of species like coral reefs are facing dire danger because of the problems related with climate change. So in order to mitigate and hopefully solve that, people extensively rely on numerical weather and climate simulations. However, right now we are having a big problem when we want to analyze the simulation result from the numerical simulations. So firstly, because most of those weather and climate data are stored in multidimensional arrays, they actually scales pretty fast with the resolution, and actually they scale by quadratically for a simple four-dimensional multidimensional array. And also look at the right-hand side, the data storage in a leading weather and climate center, ECMWF, is growing exponentially. That means even at this time, if we want to do some analysis on the highest possible resolution, which means the most accurate data, then we can only do that analysis on modern supercomputers. So that's not possible for a random weather and climate scientist. And the second problem is that there's an unmatch on the production and consumption of weather and climate data. The production of that data is quite simple. They just produce the data continuously, like we just fetch the state variable every several time steps. However, when we want to access those data, we don't usually want to have all of them. So normally we just need a subset of those data, and that would make the access pattern to be strided or even random. And that unmatched actually the multi-arrays format is suitable for the production process because we just concatenate everything together, but it's not super horrible for users to access them because imagine if we want to download a time series of data from ECMWF, like Era 5 dataset, then we actually need to download a whole data cube of data in order to access a single time series from it, and that's quite inefficient. Now, these two problems actually requires a nice compression method so that we can afford to store those data in a usual personal computer, and also we need that compression format to be quite accessible to users. Then we look closer to the weather and climate data. So firstly, we can find is that most of the variables inside the weather climate data is quite continuous and even smooth. And here we just capture a temperature field of the globe and look at the enlarged area here in Europe. And we can see the values here in this small area is quite close to each other. That means there's a lot of redundant information, especially in the most significant bit side, and it would be actually quite a waste of storage if we want to store it in a multidimensional array. And as we mentioned before, the users may want to have random or strided access, and that's quite inefficient in the multidimensional array. And a third property of that is quite important because lots of the weather and climate fields are actually stratified. That means the variations inside one vertical levels is much smaller than the variations between different vertical levels, and that will cause a lot of failure if we want just to apply some usual compression method to it, and I personally have already get those failure from lots of compression method. And the last one is also quite important because usually we see the climate weather data in this square shape, but we need to remember that we don't live on a square Earth. So those data are defined on a sphere, and that have a lot of consequences. For example, we have a periodical boundary condition along the longitude direction, and we also have much denser grid space along the polar regions if we want to represent it in longitude and latitude grid, and that will make the data along the polar regions much more smoother than the equator regions, and that means we actually need a kind of adaptive method such that the informations are captured uniformly across the sphere. So to answer that, we create a very simple compression method with a neural representation approach, and by doing that, in this approach, we view the multidimensional data as a function that takes into the coordinates and then outputs the values at those coordinates. And we train a neural network trying to surrogate that function. By training it, we effectively compress the multidimensional data into neural network weights. And according to our experiments, we can achieve 300 to 3,000 times of compression ratio while having better error measurements compared with state-of-the-art compression method. In one experiment, we successfully compressed a data set of 15.6 gigabytes into just 13.8 megabytes of neural network weight. So looking closer into the neural network structure, so the neural network itself is quite standard. It contains a Fourier feature layer, which helps it capture high frequency signals, and a series of Fourier kinetic blocks with Fourier kinetic layers, batch norms, and skip connection. And during the decompression or inference phase, we just feed in the longitude and latitude coordinates and also time and pressure level coordinates. Here, the pressure level means the measurement of the height is usually used in the weather and climate data. And before those coordinates are fed into the neural network, we transform the longitude and latitude coordinates into XYZ coordinates. And that helps the neural network to capture the informations uniformly along different latitudes, because remember, the data lives on a sphere instead of a grid, instead of a square. And in the end, I didn't plot it here, but actually before we output the scalar, the estimated value as the coordinates, we also do a denormalization, which is layer-wise, and that helps to better capture stratified data. And because of the construction of the neural representation, the decompression phase is totally on demand. That means we only need to decompress data that we need. We no longer need to decompress a block of data, even if we only need one value from it. And that's quite a distinction from other compression methods. And also we can fully utilize GPUs because thanks to the neural network implementation, and that's quite rare in other compression methods. And during compression phase, we firstly randomly sample the longitude and latitude coordinates uniformly across the sphere. That's also because of the sphere geometry. And then we also randomly sample the time and pressure coordinates in their data range. After we sample those coordinates, we interpolate the multidimensional data on those sampled coordinates and use those interpolated data as reference data. Then we train the neural network to minimize the RMSE loss between the neural network outputs and the interpolated data. After we train the neural network, we quantize the neural network weights into from 32 bits into 16 bits to squeeze a 2 times more compression ratio. Then we can find out it's our neural network implementation, even though it's super simple, it actually maps a lot of spatial property of the weather climate data into some of our treatments, as I have mentioned before, and because of that we can achieve a super high compression ratio. So, and compare with other existing compression methods, our method can achieve the highest decompression speed in both continuous and random access pattern, and we also have the fastest, have the highest compression ratio. While this is at the cost of compression speed, and it takes like 8 hours at 3 GPUs in order to compress a data set of 15 gigabytes. However, we also have some ways to mitigate that. For example, we can use some trained network weights, and that would accelerate the training phase for 3 or 4 times. And then we go into the evaluation phase. Here, we make some experiment by compressing 4 data sets while changing the neural network configurations with different weights to have a combination of different compression ratios. Then we look at the compression errors versus compression ratios and compare it with the state-of-the-art compressor SE3. And we can see here at the error measurement of routine mean square error and mean absolute error, our method have much lower error measurements at the compression ratio range of 300 times to 3,000 times. However, our method have higher max absolute error, but if we are looking at 0.99999 quantile of max absolute error, this high max error only occurs really seldomly, which is less than 0.001%. And then we look closer into the compressed data in order to verify that our method is useful for some meteorological analysis. Here we take geopotential data at 500 Pascal, which is important to do meteorological analysis. And this red square here shows the shape of blocking high at North Atlantics. It is important for precipitation and hurricane tracks, and our method, even though at over 1,000 compression ratio, can still maintain the shape of the of that blocking high. And on the other hand, the existing methods introduce lots of artifacts, and that will make the meteorological analysis impossible. However, our method do fail in capturing the high frequent, some extreme values in a small area like the hurricane center. So in this area at Caribbean Sea, there's a hurricane Matthew here. Our method also captures the surrounding areas correctly, which we can identify hurricane here, but it cannot capture the extreme values in the center. But we are now working actively to hopefully solve this issue. And then because of our method can achieve really high compression ratio, this allows a lot more applications. For example, now we can afford to store much more simulation data which have to be discarded otherwise. Even though we introduce some kind of compression error, having more data with a little bit of error is still much better than having no data. And then in the same spirit, it can act as a compressed data loader, which can maybe accelerate the data loading process and also feed the machine learning model with even more data. And we make a small experiment in this direction, and in these experiments, our method can achieve nearly 800 times of compression ratio, while the test error only increased less than 2%, which is around the range of different variations of different experiments. And And that does not count. We can actually feed 100 times more data to the machine learning model, which will hopefully make the machine learning model even more accurate. So as a summary, because the accessing the climate and weather data set has a lot of problem, so we create a really simple compression method that can achieve 300 to 3,000 times of compression ratio while having lower error measurements compared with the state-of-the-art existing compression method, and that allows a lot of more applications. So thank you so much. Please visit our poster and GitHub repo for more information.